Good morning, and thank you for coming to today's forum on shaping healthy communities, building healthy places. This event is the result of a collaboration between the Nashville Civic Design Center and the Urban Land Institute Nashville, and is largely sponsored by a ULI Urban Innovation Grant, which was awarded to by ULI to our local chapter this past October. I would like to personally thank Rose Fiegas Easton, Julia Landstreet, Gary Gaston, and Hunter G. for their dedication to making this collaboration a reality. We would like to specifically thank Cyril Stewart for his guidance and leadership in developing this program and hopefully many more initiatives to come. As always, each of our hosting organizations appreciate and continue to be dependent upon the support of their generous annual sponsors and members. Please see your table agenda for more information on those supporters, program calendars and announcements, and other valuable information such as brief biographies for your speakers today and program volunteers. Please join me in thanking these supporters, volunteers, and sponsoring firms. I'm Ryan Doyle, and I'm here today representing both the Nashville Civic Design Center as the current board president and ULI as an active local district council member and founding member of ULI's National Healthcare and Life Sciences Council. Locally, my company, One City, is focused on improving health through a development that integrates innovative businesses within a sustainable and activated neighborhood that promotes the enjoyment of a healthier lifestyle. We believe in the work of ULI and the Nashville Civic Design Center and are proud to support these organizations annually and in today's program. One City is joined today by Earl Swenson Associates, the Nashville Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, and Baptist Healing Trust in supporting this Shaping Healthy Communities, Building Healthy Places event. We are here today to learn about the opportunity for building healthy places and participate in an interactive dialogue on how to make this happen. You will first get a brief introduction on the ULI initiative, Building Healthy Places, and then hear about the Nashville Civic Design Center's upcoming publication, Shaping Healthy Communities, which they've worked on for nearly 3 years with much generous local and national support, including a portion of the ULI grant going to support this book. We are fortunate to host our keynote speaker, Dr. Matthew Trowbridge, who will discuss the intersection of the health of a community related to building and shaping its places. Finally, as a group, we will put all of these pieces together under the direction of the Nashville Civic Design Center's design director, Gary Gaston, as well as several volunteer facilitators on how those lessons and principles of land use and development might apply along Charlotte Pike. It should be an impactful morning from a global view of how to shape projects and places in a way to improve the health of communities, to the Design Center's applications throughout Middle Tennessee, to a deeper dive into one of our city's primary corridors. I've been fortunate to personally participate in some of ULI's national Building Healthy Places initiatives launched in July 2013. This past March, I attended a major seminar in LA on unlocking real estate value with healthy projects and places. The content explored the links between health and real estate. The panelists emphasized the importance of all real estate professionals seeing themselves as being in the business of improving human health. Think about it. In some way, with awareness and simple considerations, everyone in this room can make an impact on the health of our city. And I'm excited that today is the first in a series of local ULI Nashville programming to progressively drill deeper into these principles that each of us can implement to make Nashville a leader in urban design and development strategy that benefits the health of our community. Our second discussion in this series is scheduled for the morning of September 18th on Building for Wellness, the business case. That will feature 13 projects of varying product type and scale that were developed with health and wellness in mind and explores the business case for incorporating health into development projects. Developers will share their motivation for incorporating a variety of health and wellness features and how these features factored into the overall development and operations process. In addition to the event series, I'm also happy to announce that we are launching a ULI Healthy Places Action Council to focus within a smaller group on specific areas of health impact we can make as an organization in our region. If you have interest in participating, please let Rose or myself know. The ULI Building Healthy Places initiative defines healthy places as designed, built, and programmed to support physical, mental, and social well-being of the people who live, work, learn, and visit. Healthy places offer healthy and affordable housing options and a variety of safe, comfortable, and convenient transportation choices. Healthy places provide access to healthy food, the natural environment, and other amenities that allow people to reach their full potential. Healthy places are designed thoughtfully with an eye towards making the healthy choice the easy choice and are built using health-promoting materials. Healthy places address unique community issues with innovative and sustainable solutions. Through the Building Healthy Places initiative, ULI will focus on 4 main areas of impact. The first is raising awareness of the connections between health and the built environment in the real estate community and working to make sure that health is a mainstream consideration. The second is defining the approach to share information about the design elements, programming strategies, materials, and other factors that improve the health for people. The third is exploring the value proposition through building the understanding of the market and non-market factors at play in building healthy places, and the value proposition of building and operating in health-promoting ways. The fourth and last is advancing the state of practice and policy, using the ULI membership as a lever, and in partnership with others, advancing the state of policy and practice for considerations such as transportation, connectivity, access, and shifts in the built environment shaping policies. As we all know, Nashville is recognized as the healthcare capital of the United States, and great leadership resides locally in impacting how healthcare providers care for the sick with quality care while reforming the economics of how our government, private business, and individuals pay for it. What is interesting to me, though, is the fact that 75% of our nation's healthcare expenditures are preventable. Obesity is linked to heart disease, stroke, cancer, and diabetes, which are 4 of the 5 leading causes of death. Impacting and improving the health of our community begins with the characteristics of the environments we work and live in and how those environments shape our individual behaviors. And all of you in this room are in the business of shaping those environments, directly having an input on the future health of our city. So what better place than Nashville, the healthcare capital of the nation, for a group of real estate professionals to gather together with a mission of improving the health of our community through our built environment. It's going to be a fun morning. Please enjoy this video from ULI.
I think we are at code blue in terms of the health of Americans. We are in a very desperate situation in terms of the onslaught of chronic diseases, diabetes, obesity, inactivity, and the rest. And onslaught of the costs of these things. We've got to move upstream, and we've got to think about creating communities that welcome, encourage, and entice people to be healthy.
ULI is comprised of people who plan communities, design communities, oversee communities, develop communities, finance communities. So we're right there at the front lines in sort of changing the direction that all of those activities, how they take place.
They're making decisions about the shape of the world that we live in. It's becoming increasingly apparent the shape of the world we live in has a great deal to do with how healthy we are. What we're doing is consistent with what ULI has been doing for 77 years, which is to focus on creating thriving communities, sustainable communities worldwide. Part of that now, I think, relates to how a community drives health.
Building healthier communities produces better outcomes for kids in terms of learning, in terms of achievement. It's a matter of economic imperative that we try to produce the best outcomes we can for individuals to succeed, and to a large extent that is predicated on the opportunities they have, particularly as kids, to be healthy and active.
The built environment contributes to health and well-being in ways we perhaps never even imagined.
An enormous part of the GDP of this country goes towards healthcare. I believe the number is 17%. If some percentage of that can be saved because people are healthier through the design of our communities, there is an enormous benefit to the country.
part of what we're trying to do is even define what a healthy community is. A healthy community has means of providing income flow to sustain itself. So yes, there's the health and wellness, but there's a well-being and sustainability aspect to what a healthy community is.
Our hypothesis in the Building Healthy Places initiative at ULI is that healthier places, or places that are conceived and executed in a way that enhances health, will also achieve a higher value and be able to retain that value longer and be able to produce a higher return on investment for their investors and developers.
There is a chance here to do well by doing good. And somebody's going to come up with a mix that works, and you're going to walk into it and say, damn, I've never been to one of these places before. And this feels right for me, and that's going to translate into value.
We know that properties developed in a walkable community close to public space and the parks, we know that those property values are higher. So it's just how do we quantify those and make sense for the development community?
I think the builders, urban planners, architects, transportation leaders are health professionals. They don't think of themselves as white coat folks. They don't think of themselves as health professionals. But I'm going to assert that they have more impact on the health of Americans than the people sitting in the hospital waiting for the patient to come through the door.
Part of what I think ULI can do is let people understand that these are very complex systems and things do relate one to another. And if we can sort of create that holistic understanding, then it'll be easier for someone to say, no, this is going to be better for health, this is going to be better for just overall quality of life, this is going to be better for the actual financial return to the developers, and this is going to be a sustainable community in the long run.
The market will be demanding this in the future, that the market will reward projects that are built to advance human health, and that will, again, demonstrate the connection between the quality of the places we build and the value and the investment returns that those places deliver.
There's a potential here to really invent something that is community-based. So I can't think of anybody better than ULI to do it because it's complicated, it's long-term, it takes bringing in a whole multitude of different uses and expertise. That's what this needs, is somebody who can project manage these new ideas into one place.
Well, good morning. How are you guys this morning? Hi, I'm Laurel. I work at Mayor Carl Dean's office, and unfortunately the mayor couldn't join us this morning, but I wanted to welcome you all on his behalf and thank you all for coming out here for something that is very important to him and also to the health of our Nashville community. I want to recognize that there's many Metro departments that are here with us today. I see Dr. Paul from the Metro Health Department and Rick Bernhardt from Planning, members from MPO and the Arts Department, as well as General Services, and excuse me if there's many other Metro departments that are here with us this morning, but it's so pleasing to see that Metro is very involved in this and cares about this. I want to take this opportunity to share a few things with you that we're doing for the city out of the mayor's office, and some of these things you might know about, some of the things that you may not know about, but I just wanted to share some of the great momentum that we have going on here in our city, and obviously because you all are here today, you're continuing that momentum as well. So as you may or may not know, since the mayor took office, it was very important to him to put in the infrastructure to support healthy living. If you don't have the infrastructure, you can't really move and shape a healthier community. That is vital to be able to move towards healthy living and active living. So shortly after he took office, and through that, the last 6+ years, he has invested over $130 million into infrastructure that supports healthy living. And what that looks like, it can be anything from sidewalks to greenways to bikeways and bike lanes, community centers, health departments, dog parks, you name it. Those are all assets to our community that really do support healthy living. And I'm pleased to say that we have over 200 miles of bike lanes, and we have just announced some buffered bike lanes that are right by our front door on the KVB, and we're thrilled about that. That's really exciting. Thank you. And as you may or may not know, in addition to that, we have the Music City Bikeway, which is a 26-mile connector from the east side of Nashville all the way to the west side, where you can ride comfortably on your bike for a full 26 miles all across the county. In fact, if you go to Google Maps, you can pull it up and you can see the Music City Bikeway all the way connecting through our city. And that's really something to be proud of, and something that's really unique for Nashville, that you don't have to be in your car to ride from one side to the other and feel comfortable and safe and be getting some activity as well. Some other things I want to point out, that we have over 75 miles of paved greenway trails in our city, and our goal was to have every Nashville resident within 2 miles of accessing a greenway, and I'm happy to say we're over 90% of Nashville residents within that 2-mile access point. And so now we're relooking at, well, let's make it a mile, because why not? We need every Nashville resident to be within less than a mile of a greenway access point. So that is another tremendous asset we're really proud of. So some other things that you may have noticed is the red bicycles, the Nashville B-Cycle campaign that we launched recently about a year and a half ago. And we now have 206 bikes and 23 kiosks that are situated all across the urban core and spread out into different areas across our city. And we're hoping to expand that. And hopefully you guys have experienced the Nashville B-Cycle. It's a tremendous asset to bop around town, to visit friends, to go on errands and things like that. And some of the other things that I wanted to mention is we have a free Nashville Green Bikes program at our community centers. And in fact, we just opened the most recent community center at Sevier Community Center. So if you guys haven't had a chance to visit that, it's got some really excellent fitness equipment and programming and great things that are really unique to our community centers. So another thing I wanted to mention, that it's just not one thing to create the infrastructure, because if you just create it and people stare at it, it's not going to do our community any good. So you've got to motivate people to be healthy and want to use them, and to make the choice to be healthy and make that easy for them to make that selection. So some of the programs we've done, and some of you may have participated in some of them, we have a Walk 100 Mile campaign right now that the mayor's challenged all of Nashville residents to walk 100 miles this summer. And I know it's an awfully hot time to be challenging people to walk 100 miles, but we're asking people to do it in the morning or in the evening, or if you have just a quick break at lunch, to do that on your break time. And we're pleased to say we have over 2,000 people that are taking this challenge, so it's pretty tremendous to see that. We have the Mayor's Challenge 5K, which is a free 3.1 mile run or walk that happens downtown. And this route, this coming November, is going to be, the route's going to take us from downtown to the ballpark and then back. So there'll be a little bit of a different route if you've done it in the past. And we had Mayor's Field Day, which is a youth activity for all kids and adults to come out to LP Field and play where the Titans play. So that's just kind of a sample of some of the initiatives that we're doing to really motivate and get people active. And I wanted to just mention one other item to you. It's a tool that you can download on your smartphone called the Nash Vitality mobile app. And the app is free. It's on your iPhone or Android device, and it's one of the only kinds of apps like its kind in the nation. It has all the maps of all the elements that I just mentioned. It has the sidewalks and the greenways and the bikeways and the bike lanes, community centers, water access points, playgrounds, dog parks, etc. And it also now has a pedometer too. So you can simply download it and put it in your pocket and start walking. And then when you get done, you can see how far you've walked and how many calories you've burned. So there's some information at the front when you take off at the registration area. There's the new Greenways maps that are hot off the press with their newest Greenways Trails openings, and also some information about how to download the Nash Vitality app. And I want to just close that Nash Vitality is a is really an embodiment and spirit of what we're trying to do in shaping a healthier community. It came out of the CPPW grant from the CDC a few years ago, and it has really taken root here in our city. And so I see all of you and look in your eyes, and I know that all of you are here because you care about Nashville Vitality, you care about a healthier community, and I applaud you for being here this morning and figuring out how you can, as a leader in our city, continue to shape being healthy here for our Nashville residents and for our Nashville visitors and for all of us. So thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you, Laurel, and good morning again to everyone. It's so exciting to see this room full of people, and we're thrilled to have you here to participate in the Shaping Healthy Communities, Building Healthy Places whole day that we have going on. For those of you who can't stay for this afternoon, or for later this morning and this afternoon's workshop, we do have this being recorded by Channel 3, and it will be on the air, so you can participate online and on TV. I just wanted to give a quick recognition to our council people that we have in the audience today. I know, thank you, Megan Berry, Berkeley Allen, for being here. And I'd also like to recognize William McCord from Gallatin and Micah Wood from Columbia for coming. Thank you very much. I am going to get to sort of give you an overview of the work that the Civic Design Center has been doing over the past 3 years on this project called Shaping Healthy Communities. And the result of this work will be a book which will be published later this fall called Shaping the Healthy Community. And we're very excited about this. It's the culmination of a tremendous amount of research, partnerships with various different government departments in Nashville, research from across the country and around the world on this topic, and how do we take that work and apply it to Nashville and look and see how that impacts us here. You should have received one of these. This is just a quick takeaway. It's a very brief and very quick overview of some of the work that's gone into this project. So just to kind of give a little historical overview, let's do two. The profession of public health goes back to having historically a very strong partnership with the planning, design, and development community. When they came together to solve the issues of cities in the late 1800s and the early 1900s that dealt with infrastructure and how do we come together as professions and solve the issues of infectious diseases, and that was a very successful partnership. We then later sort of split apart, and it's really great to see that those professions coming back together to deal with what we've seen as the huge rise in the obesity-related diseases and maladies that have happened very strikingly over the last 20 years or so. And I'm sure many of you have seen these maps from the CDC that show just the very alarming rise in obesity rates in the United States. And you know, we are in the South where most of that is concentrated. You see the darker colors there. So this is a challenge to us. How do we start to deal with these things? The health community, I think, realized at some point that it wasn't just a strategy of individual behavior alone. They started looking at the built environment and how that can also assist in sort of combating these things. And so there's a lot of publications that began coming out in the early 2000s on the topic of urban sprawl, planning, and public health. The Design Center first got into this area, sort of stumbled into it through our partnership with the University of Tennessee, and we were hosting a lecture series with them on more related on healthcare in the built environment and the architecture, because Nashville is obviously the home of so many healthcare companies. And our very first speaker for that event was January, I remember it very clearly, January of 2009. Our first speaker was Dr. Richard Jackson. And he came and he talked globally about the topic of health and the built environment. And especially for me, and I know everyone who was there in that room, it was a pretty small crowd that day, but it was a light bulb moment where, yes, all the work that we've been doing contributes to a healthier community, but we had not explicitly made that connection in our work and in our talking about it. And so at that moment, we started working on the topic of health and the built environment in Nashville. These are just sort of some graphs that you probably can't see, but they explore the stats in Nashville of the obesity, and our top issues in Nashville are things that are preventable, causes of death. So we can take this topic and hopefully implement it in Nashville to make our city healthier. And then also, this is a graph of just showing Davidson County overlaid with the highest and lowest poverty level census tracts, and also the highest and lowest levels of premature mortality. So you can see there's a very high correlation between premature mortality rates and poverty. So if we can start to address that as well through the built environment, that could be an amazing addition to our city. And just on a national trend, ULI, AIA, ASLA, all of these different groups have picked this topic up and are running with it. So we are thrilled to be partnering with ULI on a national level and on a local level to address health in the built environment issues. So with that, we launched into our Shaping Healthy Communities project. We partnered through the Community Putting Prevention to Work grant that was through the health department. Dr. Paul was very gracious in sort of listening to us, saying this is what we want to do, and partnering with us to help kick off the funding for this project. And you can see here we have many wonderful other partner supporters. The process sort of began in 2011 and is not ending at the end of this year when the book comes out. That will actually start an implementation phase, which we're very excited about, looking again to our partners. How do we get these strategies that are in this book into the built environment in Nashville? And it's not just a book that's on the shelf, but it's actually being followed and incorporated into our planning processes. So I just briefly want to go through the way that we structured this study that we've done. And this will also inform the work that you'll be doing at the workshop portion later this morning. So the first thing we did was we did a literature review on the topic of health in the built environment. And we narrowed it down to 6 different built environment factors that we decided to look to sort of frame our conversation that play a role in public health and that topic. So just starting with the overall neighborhood design and development of a community, this is the structure and the bones of the neighborhoods we live in. So if you can imagine an urban neighborhood as seen here, has a grid of streets, sidewalks, alleys. It definitely has its form. Whereas a suburban community has a completely different form. And the earlier one is more of a walkable. It was based on walking to typically the streetcars that were servicing these urban neighborhoods. Whereas a suburban community is more focused on development around the automobile. So there's generally less connectivity. The form takes its place in as a person in the built environment. We see this many times as we're driving around our city. This is what a lot of our historic pikes look like. But that is definitely a different form than this, which is more the pedestrian, walkable community type. So that's kind of the overview of the urban design and development. Transportation, automobile, we have wonderful access to a great interstate system here. Public transit, trains, commuter rail, freight, circulator services, and even bicycles. All of those kind of count as transportation. And then we actually separated out pedestrian walkability as its own category because we feel that aspect is so important. And unfortunately, this is many of the encounters that we have, not just in Nashville, this is typical of many cities across the country. But how do we start to do our infrastructure that makes this more of the place that we want to be in walking? And if you build these sidewalks, people use them. It's really amazing to see. Food resources, Nashville is increasingly known for its food. We have a growing, vibrant local food scene here with farms that are actually located within Davidson County in both urban areas and our rural areas. The food truck movement. Council sort of changing and the city adopting being able to have a farm stand and sell community kitchens that are fostering local jobs. Housing. This is such a huge topic that we have to address as a city, but different housing types. Just over the last decade, we've seen tons of new urban infill projects, downtown redevelopment, townhomes, lofts, apartments, single-family homes. They're all different types and different forms, and we need to continue to promote that and also address affordability issues as well. And then finally, open space and parks. There are all different types of these, from very opened, natural to planned. to the lawns, to the parks, the new wonderful park we have on the riverfront, and even the idea of parklets, where we were reclaiming some very small spaces to make these tiny, vibrant areas in our urban core. So that's sort of the structure of the book, the categories that we're using. But then we started to say to ourselves, how are we going to break down this into content? So we decided to look at what's known as the transect. And this was developed as a model that basically looks at a community from the most rural, undeveloped natural areas to the densest. And in Nashville, that takes the form of this map, which are different colors and categories based on the different community types and forms that we have in our city. So that goes from, and Nashville it's sort of a really nice case study of this, because our county has all of these different areas, and downtown is right in the middle of the county. So you can kind of trace out to the county edge in many areas and follow that natural all the way rural, suburban, urban to downtown. So natural are the least developed areas of our city, often protected, mainly our large parks that we have, Beeman, Bells Bend, Shelby, et cetera. Then we have our rural areas. These are largely undeveloped, farmland, usually sometimes septic systems still. Suburban, mostly post-World War II development, largely centered on automobile. Usually actually was developed on rural land that then became the suburban areas. Of course, I already mentioned the urban areas and the surrounding the downtown. Then we have the downtown core, which is the densest, home of all the cultural institutions, office structure. Centers are the large shopping areas around the city. So the area around the Green Hills Mall, Rivergate, and other major intersections that have large commerce that draws people from various different areas of the county. And then districts, which include things like universities, industrial areas, the airport. So that's kind of the way the book is structured. There's a chapter on each one of those areas, and then we explore those different built environment forms within those chapters and discuss strategies for creating healthier places in those different community types. So I just want to go through, finally, in closing, a few of the project ideas that we've explored in the book, and you can see some of the illustrations. This is going to be a 250-page book with probably 500 illustrations in it. So it's really going to be fun to read and look at. We're looking at community areas. How can you transform these large highways, which I just want you to notice. There is a turn lane here that I don't know where you would turn to, but how can we change that model and also implement, would be the future rail line to Clarksville, which would have a bike lane and a shared path along its edges. This is Madison. How do we take these large aging shopping centers and start to transform them into new, vibrant places that are creating hearts to these communities and reinvesting in them? Again, that's the same view with the streetscaping that we keep referring to and talking about. How do we start to kind of repair some of these problems that were caused when the interstates were built, where neighborhoods were literally just severed? So we're looking at the idea of creating land parks, bridges that would connect these areas. This is around the Jefferson Street community in North Nashville. Just transforming a sort of unused alley system to a greenway park along a creek. I was clapping when Laurel mentioned the protected bike lanes. I think this is one of the most important things we can do. And we keep talking about little BRT on Charlotte, which would be bike rapid transit, and would implement a major new protected bike lane all along Charlotte. So this may be the most controversial plan in the book, but putting trees on Broadway and widening the sidewalks. I was just down there taking Dr. Turbridge out to some of our honky tonks, and it's so amazing and crowded and packed, and let's get some wider sidewalks there. This is a view along 6th Avenue and just the new development that's going to happen with the development of everything that's happening in Sobro. And this is one of my favorites. It's the protected bike lanes and trying to narrow and make the Korean Veterans Bridge more pedestrian friendly. And then just sort of your typical Pike intersection that could be more friendly. And then also in the book, we have a chapter on individual building design and site design. And had the pleasure of touring with Dr. Paul, the new Lentz building yesterday, which was is really an awesome display of how you're incorporating the built environment factors into the building to promote healthy activity of the users of that. So I'm thrilled to say that this project, even though we haven't completed the book yet, it's already received a lot of national attention. We've been featured in the AIA's Local Leaders edition that was published last year. We've had a lot of other recognition for this project. And just to sort of transition, I had the opportunity of being introduced to Dr. Trowbridge, Matt, when Leslie Meehan with the MPO said, there's someone I think you should look at. I think you'd be great for your project and to bring in as a speaker. And so I said, okay, that's great, but other things happen and you put a name aside for later. And then I was actually working on a project, on a chapter in the book that related to healthy school design. And so I Googled healthy school design, and a video came up, and I clicked watch, and it was Matt in the video. And so I contacted him, and we started talking, and I think made a really strong connection. He was very excited about the work that we're doing here in Nashville. And actually, when I got invited to DC at the end of April to talk about this project, at the American Institute of Architects Foundation event that they were hosting, and had a chance to, for the first time, meet Matt in person. And so I knew after that meeting that he would be great for this event and for helping us sort of kick off officially the sort of start of rolling out this project. And I'm thrilled that you're here today, Matt. I just want to give a very short bio for Matt. He is a physician and public health researcher and assistant professor at the UVA School of Medicine. His academic research focuses on the impact of architecture, urban design, and transportation planning on public health issues, including childhood obesity, traffic injury, and pre-hospital emergency care. Matt was named the 2013 Ginsberg Fellow by the U.S. Green Building Council for his work to promote healthier built environments. And I would like to ask that we all give a big Nashville welcome to Matt Trowbridge.
Thank you. As with any, these days, it's always hard to handle the technology almost more than anything as you transition. But thank you so much. It's really exciting to be here, and we're just getting my stuff up. I've already had an amazing time. This is one of those jobs where being invited to come to Nashville and seeing what you guys are already doing, I can tell you I've definitely been learning, I would say, more than I'm here to really teach. I think you guys are already doing a fantastic job. So, basically, as the title of my talk kind of says, what I hope today is to show you kind of some of the things I've been working on, the way public health as a discipline is thinking about this, and try to give you guys another framework to keep in mind and to utilize, and know that there's another group of partners out there for you guys to lean on. One question I have: what's the kind of distribution of the group today? How many folks kind of identify themselves as developers? All right, and like urban planners, okay, architects, okay, and like health professionals. There we go. I know I had a couple in there. That's great. I always do love Dr. Jackson's point about and is there somebody else I've forgotten? Well, let's make sure. I'm sorry? Exactly. No, that's perfect. And thank you for being here, because we need everybody, seriously. I do love Dr. Jackson's point that, everyone in this room, we hope, as this movement progresses, will realize that you guys really are actually all part of promoting health and really thinking of yourself as health professionals. It's really, we're not just saying that. I mean, I think the science is really starting to show that you guys really are a big part of determining the health of your community. And so, as Gary said, I mean, I've had just a great time. You guys have this amazing place. I've been, I've had a rapid tour of everything going on in Nashville. I took, seeing all the street art. I definitely, you guys have this strong sense of place here already, and it's such an amazing, vibrant place. I mean, you guys are already creating these incredible places that I got to walk around and see, and it's also clear that the community really loves them. So you guys already have like the sauce, the secret sauce of like knowing how to create successful places is incredible. And it's also clear that I need to keep coming back because the things that are coming are probably even more exciting. So just Nashville as a palette is amazing and dynamic, and I think that's the point of today, obviously, for you guys to get these ideas down and keep moving. And so again, what I'm going to try to do today is briefly kind of tell you about some stuff that you guys can think about as you go forward in that. So one thing I like to do, I've found useful for myself, and I think I've found that other folks, developers and so forth, have found interesting, is to think about kind of how is public health thinking about this stuff, built environment and health. And what I like to come back to is, telling a story, probably the classic public health story is the story of John Snow, who was, many consider him the first epidemiologist in London. And basically he made a name for himself during one of the worst cholera epidemics in London. And what he did that was really remarkable was in the map, you can see all the little dark rectangles there. He was the first person to take incidence of a disease, cholera case, and map it. And so he put him on the map, and by doing that, he didn't have any fancy statistics, but he was just able to show that all the cases clustered around a particular pump in downtown London. And then he did his famous, very dramatic, walked up to the pump and just took the handle off, and the cholera epidemic stopped. Of course, water was also not available in the area, but that part of the story you could do things differently back then. He's the classic kind of environmental health, and that model of thinking about the built environment and health has persisted for a long time. The idea of you as a physician sit in your healthcare office, you see a patient come in with a constellation of symptoms, and then you say, I wonder if there's something in the environment causing this. You go out, find the toxic exposure, and remove it. And we see that in things like lead paint. Still the same thing. The pediatrician sees the constellation of symptoms, go into the home, remove lead paint. I think what we're starting to realize, though, is that the toxicity we start seeing out there is really different than it was when the big issues of our day, obesity, things like that, we're starting to realize that it's things like the very fabric of the way we've built our cities in the last few decades. That's starting to be the toxic thing. Well, that's a little bit trickier, right? You can't just go and take a handle off as easily. And more importantly, I think what we're starting to realize is that that's probably not the right way to do it. Sitting passively in the doctor's office, waiting, and then going out, probably not going to cut it. So I think what's exciting, what I've come to realize, what we're really talking about here in public health is moving from an environmental health model of that, moving more to an environmental design. Like, let's go out and actively design these environments to promote health, not just remove toxicity. And I find that to be really exciting. And that's what I think we're all here today to do. I am not a designer, I'm not a planner, and I think it's good for us all to own whatever our role is. But I am a public health practitioner, I am a scientist, and I think my field we can help you with frameworks for thinking about how to develop the right kinds of metrics. I've had great conversations the last few days about, it's not just about proving a perfect association, but creating metrics that are actually useful to making, supporting developers who want to do this type of work. So it's a very active, new, early collaboration, but I hope that this talk can give you some thoughts. So, we've already started talking about this. Like, when you start thinking about environmental design, obviously the conversation has been, a lot of it has been at the kind of this concept of urban sprawl. How do we start reversing the automotive dependent lifestyle that we've kind of passively, accidentally perhaps engineered for ourselves? And I always talk to my students that I always try to make sure they understand, like, before we just accept what we're all kind of currently living in as normal, we have to remember, I always like to point out that these are highly experimental conditions that we've created, where we've made these residential areas right up in the middle of rural areas. These are very new environments. They have only existed for a couple of decades, and that's part of why we're only now starting to grapple with the health implications of them. But I always try to make sure we don't get too, like, this is new, these things that have kind of woken up and realized we've created. So we need to, and as you probably have seen, this is a classic picture now within both environment and public health. And we chuckle, but my goodness, we all know that this is actually quite true. We have a culture of kind of convenience. And also, I think what you also can see is that very small moments of design can make a huge difference, particularly when they add up over and over and over again across a community. And now what is also interesting is, we've talked about urban sprawl and things like that. The science is also starting to show, and actually even the general population is really starting to recognize that even literally very small moments of design, things like how much we sit, our workplace designs inside the buildings, it's turning out that the time that you sit is an independent risk factor, even from the amount of moderate exercise and stuff you get. That in and of itself, sitting too long turns out to be a major risk factor for a lot of different poor health outcomes. So again, just further justification that thinking carefully about design and getting engaged with this really will have a big impact. Excuse me. And I think another thing that I always like to point out, a lot of this work has been spurred by the need to address childhood obesity and so forth. But the reality is that the list of health factors that that have an environmental determinant and that can be addressed through better design, the list goes on and on. We can just keep making it. And I think we should all recognize that going forward. And for example, my story of how I got involved in this, I actually started off really working on traffic injury and working directly with crash safety engineers. This is actually the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, which is just up the road from Charlottesville. And so I work with these guys a lot and help them. I was putting all of my energy into helping them tweak airbag designs and create countermeasures in cars and so forth. And then I just kind of had this realization at one point where now we're up in 9, 10, 12 airbags. Maybe this isn't the fat part of the curve anymore in terms of where we're going to really prevent traffic injuries. And we also started to realize that maybe it's, that it's not just that it's not just the airbag. The airbag is really, that's too late. It's like, how do we deal with preventing the traffic injuries before they occur? And I also started to realize that when you look at cross-traffic injury as a discipline, the two groups that we most worry about are very young drivers and older drivers. But they're completely different. Obviously, young drivers, it's really a question of they're not finished developing. And it's an impossible task to make, and it's the wrong task to try to make teen drivers better drivers. It's just not going to work. It's normative for them to take risks and so forth. But offering them alternatives so they don't have to drive, that's a more compelling option. Similarly, it's really, really difficult to be a clinician and be put in the position of thinking about whether someone is still capable of driving as an older person. Because chronologic age is a terrible predictor of whether they should be still driving. And also I think, again, it's the wrong question. It's not about whether they still can drive. It's because I think in many cases, if you had a chance to really get people to think about, in both cases, young drivers and older drivers, it's not about driving the car. It's really about having freedom of mobility, right? It's really about being able to be independent, to be able to see their friends, get things done as an independent person. And so again, I just started being like, wow, we're really not asking the right questions if we're worrying about airbag design in these cases. I still work with those guys, so I still believe in it, but the fat part of the curve, that's what I was really getting interested in. And I think things like injury prevention I find that it's an important health outcome that is not it's not discussed as much as things like obesity prevention, and in many cases the linkage is more direct. And the size of the issue is also, I mean, we normalize traffic injury a lot, but the reality is that close to 40,000 people a year in the United States still die from traffic crashes. I mean, that's incredible. And what this slide is kind of telling you about is what we call the injury pyramid, which is for every one death, there's about 18 people hospitalized for serious injuries and about 400 serious injuries that need at least like emergency care. So again, if you can make, think about injury prevention as another thing that you guys can utilize as a justification for moving towards less car-dependent lifestyles. And just to make that point further, I mean, when you look at those young and older drivers, does anyone see a pattern here in where the risk is? I mean, it's incredible, and it's not subtle. And so again, the point of this slide is always just to make it so evident to you, but also to see that particularly those young guys, the young teens that's a difficult thing. You don't want to get into trying to train them better. It's a losing battle. And what I started so this slide was really what kind of got me thinking. I'm trying to give you a little bit more of a sense of my own background too, because what I realized was it's not just that last slide is deaths per mile traveled. But then what I also realized was because we've created these new environments, it's not just the number of miles that they're traveling, but what miles they are actually traveling. These environments didn't even really exist even when I was a 16-year-old. And so we're asking kids to drive more and in incredibly dangerous conditions. And so that realization led to one of the first studies I really did in this area, which I think you guys might find interesting. I basically it was my first moment to be able to collaborate with an urban planner. I just cold called a brilliant urban planner at UVA, and I said, is there a way we can measure sprawl? And she helped me find the right thing. And then basically I linked up with some databases I had, and we looked at the question of, okay, so urban sprawl, we've been talking about it as like making it harder for people to walk and so forth. Is it associated with teen driver safety risk? And essentially what we realized is, as you saw from that slide, since driving itself is so risky for teens, what we decided to do is just say, how much more do teens in sprawling areas drive as compared to teens in, not just in, this wasn't Manhattan versus rural, it was, suburban areas that are more kind of a smart growth type compact development versus sprawling. And basically what we found was when you look at that most high risk group, the 16 to 17-year-old males, in a compact suburban environment, they have about a 9% chance of driving more than 20 miles in a particular day. And that doesn't mean in the car, that means literally driving. So versus almost 24% in a sprawling county. I can't really emphasize enough, like when I came to like an injury prevention conference and presented these things and said, you guys we're tweaking the airbags, and meanwhile, the way we designed a community changes the likelihood that our most dangerous driving demographic it's 24% chance versus 9% chance that they're driving more than 20 miles a day. There was just this like silence, and everybody was, oh my gosh, it put everything in perspective. This is where we should be, in my opinion, and I think many others do too, this is where we should be trying to prevent teen driver safety or trying to prevent teen driver injuries. Another thing that I also find, people have found useful in terms of another health outcome to consider is, I'll tell you the story. Basically, as I started to become more and more enjoy my collaborations with urban planners, I became really fascinated with how much planning knows about things like, what you need to make transportation systems viable in an area. My friends could tell me, these planner friends of mine could tell me like the exact density you needed and the street network, and just like from day one, there's no way that a bus network would work or transportation work in this type of environment. I have done work as an emergency physician and a lot of work with EMS personnel, And I just had this realization. I was like, we're talking about buses, but the reality is the same stuff occurs for even ambulances. You know, I mean, I think we all sometimes think about EMS systems as like the water. You know, you expect if you needed an ambulance, you turn on the faucet or something and someone would be there. In reality, obviously, it's a finite resource. These are ambulances, have to be distributed around a network. You start getting away from a grid-like network, you start making things less dense. It's just literally impossible. You can't make an ambulance system run in the same way. I feel like that's been a part of the conversation of people moving into these very new environments, that they make those choices somewhat unknowingly. I think folks that move purposefully to a rural environment, that's part of you're taking a little bit more of it's an independent sense. I think there's a lot of people that move to these brand new kind of exurb environments that haven't really thought about the fact that they put themselves quite far away from really efficient ambulance networks. And for example, in Arizona, you know, during the height of the kind of development boom when a lot of sprawling development was happening, you know, they were building out, and this is outside of Phoenix, whereas the only level 1 trauma center was in downtown Phoenix, probably more than 50 miles away. And so really, if something happened, your really only option for getting somebody somewhere fast was a helicopter. And that's just not really a very viable option at scale. So, and then of course, as I started thinking about it through the perspective of EMS, my goodness, even once you get close to the person's neighborhood, when I talk to the ambulance drivers, they start being like, we get lost in these places. You know, is it Elm Lane or Elm Street, you know, or Red Elm Street? They have no idea. And plus, suddenly those little subtle effects of like having a curvilinear street where it makes every possible route into that house literally as long as possible, because everybody wants to be on that cul-de-sac. Well, for an ambulance driver, that can add 30 seconds, 45 seconds. That doesn't sound like a lot, except if you've stopped breathing. You know, it's non-negotiable. There's really only a couple of minutes before you need something to happen fast. And then, of course, I don't even talk about it in this talk, but they also talk about the fact that ambulance drivers hate speed bumps, which is also like usually what ends up happening. I mean, the planners here understand like these wide roads that you end up putting in with the design speed goes way up. So people will, hey, we got to put the speed bumps in. Well, an ambulance has to come to almost a full stop every time. And so you can end up losing a minute or more just from the speed bumps. So again, design it to make it slow from the start. Think about ambulances. It's another thing that you guys can utilize in conversations going forward, I think. And just to, again, what we did was we quantified that. So what we did was we used that same sprawl index, where it's a way of looking at a suburban area, quantifying it on a variety of different factors, and then normalizing. So it's the only weird part about it is, so you can say a suburban area, how sprawling is it? I don't know why they did it this way, but just keep in mind that 352 is New York City, so higher means less sprawling. Sorry, I didn't do it. But whereas lower means very sprawling. And most of the U.S. counties fall between about 55 and 150. The reason I'm showing you this is just for you to understand these results, which is what we looked at when we plotted the probability of a delayed EMS response, so more than 8 minutes, and then looked at the sprawl index. You can see pretty striking relationship between, as you become less sprawling, so get higher and go into the right, the probability of a delayed EMS response really goes down. And when you look at very specific things, and I didn't cheat, I really just tried to choose, I took Google Maps and just the center of these counties. It has face validity. You look at Fayette County, Georgia, and it's a very, significantly very sprawling area, and you can see that it has all the hallmarks of kind of a sprawling design. And case in point, about a 70% chance of a delayed EMS response there, as opposed to like Delaware County, Pennsylvania, which is a traditional suburb just outside of Philadelphia. Again, right in the center, you can see kind of more of the hallmarks of kind of grids and a bit more a dense design. Still a suburban environment. You get now suddenly down to about a 30% chance. It's not perfect, but hugely different. And I think what I've also realized is this type of county is probably more what the EMS systems were designed to operate in. So not surprisingly, they do better there. We've created these new environments, these experimental environments, and it's really hard to do things like deliver EMS care there. And I think one thing that I've really been struck with as I've been studying this, I've started studying this during this really complex time for our country. You know, not only are we dealing with these health issues, but then we threw in things like foreclosure and the financial crisis and so forth. And so suddenly, you know, and now there's starting more and more awareness that, you know, suburban areas are now becoming areas of really more concentrated poverty. That is going to be, I think, going forward at a national level, a really big issue to consider, because when you take that EMS system and now you say the people who can't afford either to move away, or that is where the inexpensive housing is now. Now, you know, these are folks also that need EMS care. Or I think it's also always important to recognize, you know, we see these areas, these are major arterials that we would never think of walking on, and then we kind of chuckle as that's not a very walkable environment. Keep in mind there are people that really have to use these places as walkable environments. And I think that's another thing that won't show up in the statistics as much, but there's an ethical aspect of this, I think, of providing safe, walkable options for people wherever they need to live. So how do we do this? You know, and obviously I don't have all the answers, but I'll give you real quickly an area of work I'm embarking on that I'm really excited about. It's basically what I've started doing in the last few years is I just started realizing I want to be on the side of figuring out how to translate what I've learned in public health research into action. And one of the systems that I've been really impressed by as a physician, I didn't know any of this stuff, was obviously I looked across and saw the whole green building world, which over the last 20 years has really quite successfully taken sustainability, which felt, my understanding is, similar to the way this health realm feels. You know, sustainability now matters in the marketplace. It has successfully transformed, you know, the way we build places. And it just struck me that could be a really neat platform for how do we leverage that to bring in some of these in a more intentional way, health and wellness. And to get really more specific, I also was asked, you know, I had the opportunity, I was approached by VMDO Architects, which is a great school architecture firm in Charlottesville. And they were like, you know, this is really exciting, but could you help us actually try to design something, a school? And when they showed me, what was really exciting was that they showed me some of the green schools that they were building. You know, things like this is they got a lot of accolades for this school, Manassas Park, up in Virginia. And I started seeing just the way that they were doing things, like this is a water feature in the front that, you know, normally this would be the place where the storm runoff water would be, you know, encapsulated in a chain link fence in the back of the school. Instead, what they did was they took it in the front and made it an amphitheater when there's no water in it, and then when the water comes, it fills up and just turns into a water feature in front, but it also serves as a classroom and a place for the kids to meet and so forth. And also what they kept saying to me over and over again was like, you know, hey, we're actually have taken invisible infrastructure and turned it into a teaching tool. You know, now suddenly this thing that was like an ugly thing in the back is now up front being used to teach kids about, you know, stormwater and so forth. And they extended that even further. They said, hey, you know, this is our cistern, but instead of just having it be semi-invisible, we made it very prominent. We made signage all over it. We made a custom barber pole that when it rains, it rises up and tells you exactly how much water is in the cistern. And this started really getting me excited as I started thinking about, you know, gosh, well, it's not just like nudging or kind of prompting people to do different behaviors. You can also use these things we're doing together to teach the next generation values about what you want, things that you want them to espouse. And what's really fun when you go to this school is that every kid in this school knows the exact watershed they're on. They know exactly how much water, after every storm, they know exactly how much water is in the cistern. They know exactly how much water, like flushing the toilet, uses. These kids, like, they're all about environmental stuff because of their school is this active classroom for them. They take that even further. They have an HVAC system. They made this system called a green light system. So when the environmental conditions are appropriate to open the windows, like the humidity and the temperature are correct, the green light, the windows don't open automatically. What instead happens is the green light goes on, and culturally, it's okay in the school for the kids to jump up and run and open the windows. And I was there when it happened. It's so awesome. just because the kids really get it, and they understand, like, so making the whole idea in green building, a big part, and particularly in school design, has been this idea of building as teaching tool. And this was really compelling to me because we're always trying to find ways to teach kids about healthy eating and healthy walking and so forth. And so what we turned into, my colleague Terry Wong and I started thinking, I wonder if, could we use like school space architecture as like a teaching tool for the health behaviors we're trying to get kids to take on. But this was like, an academic paper of, this is really interesting. And then suddenly VMDO was like, let's do it. Okay, wow. So we tried. And also what's exciting is as we started to get this idea going, I actually had an opportunity to work at NIH for National Institutes of Health for a few years. And again, they got excited about this as well. So I was just trying to say there's other resources. This idea of bridging, using the infrastructure of green building as a platform to promote healthy design is really gaining traction. So this is actually a report from a workshop I organized for NIH, Centers for Disease Control, USDA, and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. You can download it at the nccor.org site. So, but basically, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little out of order in my argument here, but basically, as we started to think about, well, how would we do that theoretical concept, right around that same time, the active design guidelines came out. Who's familiar with the New York City active design guidelines? Okay, so this is great. This is what I love, is that you assume that this is really well known. But basically, in New York City, they came up with the idea of how do we take the idea of physical activity promoting design, and I think the key innovation was how do we make it actually useful to an architect, to a developer, so they know what we're talking about. And so they took all the available public health research they could on how to promote physical activity at an urban scale and at a building scale, and the key thing was they turned it into a set of design guidelines and they made it in a beautiful, I don't think it's random, a really beautiful booklet that looks appropriate sitting on a coffee table in an architecture office. And it really dictates exactly how you can make a health promoting physically active building. And we thought this was fantastic. And actually, this is what we partnered with VMDO, is that took that idea of like building as a teaching tool, took the example of active design guidelines, saying, getting specific, and we sat down. They had a client that wanted to take in a rural school district in Virginia that wanted to take on healthy eating as a kind of central narrative of their school. And what was really fun, and I think very challenging for the architects, but I think they really thought it was amazing, was we sat down before we designed and wrote down a set of hypotheses. What are the features we think of a school that would be, if we went through every aspect of a school, like in terms of location, what would be the best available evidence, the best theoretical framework that we could apply? I mean, we literally went through every domain of the building we could. The kitchen zones, the classrooms, the school gardens, and so forth. And basically, we went from this 1950s era school. Again, I have to emphasize this is in the middle of Virginia, central Virginia, very rural, very low income, ethnically diverse area, and what was amazing was if you ask the community to try to engage with you, they will do it. And they jumped in and said, yeah, let's make a healthy eating school. And it was just fun for me to be involved all the way from the beginning processes of the design development. We basically, what we ended up with was what VMDO says is we reimagined the cafeteria as a classroom. And essentially went through that was like the central part of this particular project. We went through the cafeteria and really you'll see there's a video I'll show you real quickly, but it was basic things like instead of just hoping that a kitchen garden or a community garden might happen there, we built a space for it. It's in the plans. It was in the construction documents actually, to actually have a school garden there. We opened up the cafeteria to the kitchen so that the food service personnel were directly engaging, serving the kids directly. They weren't. We kind of removed that in and out, and there was just always a clear visual connection. There's classrooms, there's a teaching kitchen, there's a food resource area right in the building. The idea was to basically make, yes, prompt healthy eating as a day-to-day activity, but make it as easy as possible for teachers to teach about it as well. So anyway, it was super exciting. These are just some of the more of the renderings of what that kind of, how those things kind of were designed. This food lab in the cafeteria. So, and then some of the other really fun things that I thought were really a really neat marriage of cutting edge science, research, and design were things like really taking care, and this is something you guys could do at an urban scale as well, is really think carefully about like wayfinding, educational signage. We basically reverse engineered imagining the school tour led by a kid. And we wanted the idea to have the kid be able to take you on a tour and have areas, things like, okay, we want to promote drinking water as the kind of preferred choice. Well, don't just have that as like a sign. We made, it's hard to see in this picture with the lighting, but the water fountains are displayed almost as like sacred objects. They're like, there's inset, they have beautiful color, they're lit, and then there's also like consistent iconography throughout the school. So like anytime you're near something, the kids know when to pause, like showing an adult the school, and they get it. They know like this we're all about drinking water in this school. We're all about using the stairs. And they can tell you it's kind of like that the water usage example, but now made for health. So anyway, this is a really exciting project. It was a big stretch for me. As I told you, I was an urban sprawl guy, and here I was helping to try to design a school. But my point is, I think if all of us can think across scales, it's going to be very exciting. So I think just to close, I just wanted to just show you that quick video that Gary talked about. This was made, it was on the Buckingham School project. Robert Wood Johnson got very excited about it. And so I think it makes a great way for us to close, and then we'll open up for discussion. So here we go.
As a pediatrician, my job is really to think about children's health broadly. In this project, what we're trying to think through is how can we use the design of the school building itself to help promote healthy behaviors and long-term attitudes about things like healthy eating and a culture of physical activity that, yes, influences the direct behavior of children in the school today, but most importantly, influences the way they think about both healthy eating and being physically active for the rest of their lives. Everyone in this project was doing something brand new. They were definitely using their expertise, but in a totally new way. And for Terry and I, this was a chance to apply some theoretical ideas that are evidence-based, but definitely theory, that the design of a school could be utilized for something like obesity prevention.
This is the Carter G. Woodson Education Complex in Dillwyn, Virginia. On the left side is K through 2, and on the right side is 3 through 5, and we have about 960 students total.
We took a school, obviously one of the community's most treasured resources, and really tried to apply thinking from public health, from design, from education, from environmental stewardship, a lot of things that haven't necessarily been combined, and boiled it down to a set of design guidelines and now a real building.
And working with the design and research team, we identified every nook and cranny inside and outside of the school, the color palette, the materials, the furniture, all the experiences a child has throughout the day became meaningful and rich with opportunity to promote health.
We have a multi-purpose center that has a soft floor. It's a huge open gym. We have a full basketball court. Our art, music room is just a really healthy spaces for kids.
Our children love the openness of the cafeteria, the restaurant style. The kids seem a lot happier now that we are in this new building. The openness of it, having all the windows and letting in all the sunlight, has really uplifted, I think, their moods as well as the teachers.
This is a building that's really child-centric. It's not trying to keep them in one particular space or in one particular seat. The entire building is a classroom. A kid is a kinetic, excited entity. And many of the design decisions that have been implemented here, including all the way down to the furniture choices, are meant to let the child move.
There are specific aspects about health, such as childhood obesity, that we can create design features around to promote change in that area. So as a whole, those small acts of design have a big impact.
Our community loves it, but I think more than anything else, they love it because the kids are going home saying that they love school. Other schools around the country should come look and replicate what we're doing here. I think that the activity and healthy choices really goes to supporting our academic goals, and it's exciting.
I think all of us recognize that the spaces in which we inhabit, where we live, work, we play, they can have a tremendous impact on how we behave, how we think about things, how we socialize.
So we have to put kids first and do whatever it takes to give them the opportunities they deserve. And they deserve to have a healthy start to their lives.
So thanks very much. Really excited for you guys as a city, and just it's been a pleasure to be here. And thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate it.
Just briefly give an update on how you're translating this sort of micro level at the school building to community-wide health incorporation.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the key thing to take away from the Buckingham project is that what I'm always careful to point out is that it's not just about school, it's not just about healthy eating. The goal, the thing we're most proud of from that was the collaboration. And it did take work, and it takes sustained conversations like this one, where we had to kind of figure out how do we take whatever the scale you're working at or whatever the health outcome that's been determined to be important or viable for the project, assembling the right groups. And I think teaching the public health world needing to learn how to make what we know how to do more actionable. And then on top of that, also groups in development, planning and so forth, learning how to, engage in those types of research. We all want the same types of things, but like figuring out how to create basically a new type of collaboration is really important. So, I hope that's honestly where I feel like I am doing now, and what is exciting is that we're trying to just foster this exact type of conversation going on. But anyway, that's the main thing I'm excited about right now. Are there any other specific questions or anything like that?
We'll probably have time for a couple.
Yeah, great.
So in your time in Nashville, what have you seen as our biggest challenge, opportunity, obstacle to overcome?
Well, I want to be careful that I certainly did not get a full tour. What I honestly, I mostly see that the opportunity really is quite remarkable. We've had some really interesting conversations about, I hope that you guys tell the story, not just starting now, but starting back. I mean, we've been talking about things like you've had clearly a succession of very visionary leaders, at the mayor levels, for example, and even some unique aspects of the way that your government system, the understanding of like merging of city and county governments and things like that. Those are really pointing out, like in contrast to other communities, why that has allowed you to do the things you guys are clearly able to do. It's really important as a national movement. I think at a local level, I just really, seriously, like the places we saw, like vibrant park spaces and a real appetite for that, and you clearly are on the side of momentum where there's support and excitement for doing that. And then there's things like the health center that we visited yesterday. Maybe I'm more of a rare, maybe I've had a rare glimpse at it, but it's incorporating things like the active design guidelines that I mentioned. They're right there. When you walk in, it's just the stair is beautiful, it's prominent, it's the obvious and fun way to move around that building. And there's even things like a walking track and things like that. They're integrated. Fantastic. So I just mostly see you guys are you have so much potential, and you really have a great unified group here. Anyone else? Yeah.
The school is beautiful, and it's really inspiring to see that. Did the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation pay for these improvements, or did the community pay for it?
The Robert Wood Johnson, they just made the video, so I know. Well, but which, to be honest, has actually been hugely helpful in terms of kind of starting a larger conversation. It's important to point out that actually the cost of the school really was not changed by the healthy guidelines. When you really look at what we did, it's really more like different choices were made, and but we were invited in very late. Ideally what we've learned is you would ideally do this with like a 2-year community engagement process, a needs assessment, engage everybody, choose your metrics carefully, so forth. That wasn't, as with many great opportunities, that wasn't the way this went down. We were brought in and we basically mostly had an opportunity to influence the design of the cafeteria. But why I bring that up is that the budget was set. The money had been already allocated, and even doing all the things we did, the project came in actually under bid, so it didn't add any extra cost to do these features.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, thanks so much.
Okay, we are about to take a 20-minute break, and for those of you who are staying for the design workshop, we'll please ask you to go out into the lobby so that we can reset the tables. And if you're a table facilitator, I ask that if you need to go take a restroom break, please do that now, and then come back in here and we'll assist in getting all these tables ready for the design workshop portion. One other announcement, if you are a Twitter user, we have a handle, it's hashtag SHCN. Hashtag SHCN, and we have the @NCDC as our Twitter handle. Thank you. Okay, welcome to the design workshop portion of our Shaping Healthy Communities, Building Healthy Places program. And so you all are going to get to envision various different areas along the Charlotte Pike corridor. And I just want to kind of briefly give you an intro to what we'll be doing today. When we found out we got the grant, we started looking into, okay, how can we best structure a workshop that would try to encapsulate bringing all these different strategies that we've looked at for shaping healthy communities. And there was so much discussion and excitement sort of bubbling on that with things that have been happening along Charlotte Pike that we decided that seemed like it would make a really wonderful case study for all of these different principles and strategies. If you look at Charlotte Pike from downtown to the county line, it really does have all of those qualities. I think, sorry, it's over here, Ron. Changeover of technology. It really does have all of those qualities of going from the downtown core through the midtown area, which is sort of the center classification, out to urban neighborhoods, to suburban, to rural, and then there are natural areas and a sort of smattering of district and industrial uses all along that pike. So there's just a few resources in the room for your consideration as groups. You'll notice in the back corner, we have two very large illustrations that zoom in on Charlotte Pike from downtown all the way to the county line, and in a map form, figure ground, and in an aerial. And along that, we've sort of tried to highlight various different projects that are happening along the corridor. And then there's also a map in the back that showcases the different colors of the community types that I discussed earlier. And these are the boxes that represent all of the different study areas that are in the room. So what we've done is somewhat anonymous. You weren't assigned to a table, but I'm encouraging you. I know a lot of you in here maybe have businesses or developments or interests or design projects along the corridor. And you may want to, you might have come in here and said, I wanted to sit in that area. But I would encourage you to kind of sort of consider the health of the entire pike. And maybe you want to sit in an area that's not where your project is, because what we're trying to do here is look holistically at the street and to try to start to address the idea that the health of the entire stretch of Charlotte Pike is basically dependent upon all of these different areas functioning well. So if you're not at your area, please kind of think that way and outside the box, and all of your ideas are going to be incorporated into this process today. So we have your wonderful facilitators. And here's just a few images of kind of how the character changes from downtown as you drive out along Charlotte Pike through the urban areas, Midtown. Amazing development. I had a chance to drive out again yesterday and see all of the stuff that's happening. But again, also incredible potential as well. So as we get started, when we have public meetings, we really go into the sort of rules of being polite. But I mean, everyone here, it's great today, right? So, but just letting everyone have a voice at the table, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So, so the scenario that you're sitting down to is Charlotte Pike has been receiving a lot of new development attention, and we want to discuss the possibilities for what the community character is currently, what is the form related to all of those built environment factors, and then we're going to go into what is the vision, what could be there that could help these areas become healthier and contribute to an overall healthier city. And then we'll take this Charlotte Pike case study, and after this is done, we'll incorporate this into a report, which will be published with a lot of all the information today, and hopefully that can then be used to help inform how we start to look at all the different pikes in Nashville. So we're going to let your table facilitators get started with the first question, and this is going to go for about 30 minutes, and then we'll talk about the visioning component, and then the last aspect is to imagine if there's one or two or three catalytic projects that are in your area that could really spark development for making a healthy community there. Brainstorm about what those projects ideas are, because what we've seen is if you've got a really good idea and you talk about it, sometimes it can spark the imagination of either the city or developer, and it can really happen. So that's kind of the process we're asking you today, and then we'll report at the end of the session after lunch back on all the different ideas from the tables. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to your table facilitators. All right, thanks.
My name is Paul, and this is Johnson, and we're with Group 1. Our main site was the core of Charlotte Pike, so right there around downtown. And some of the problems that we realized is that it's a lot of state property, especially in this area you see here. So, after around 4:30 or 5 o'clock, it's largely inactive. You've got people that are coming here and heading straight to downtown because this is where things are happening. This is where development is. So our thing with Charlotte Pike was, how can we activate the streetscape to provide more activity for those who are coming up? Because there's opportunities here for a lot of development. And one of the main things that we focused on was food. So if you're living in downtown, there's not a lot of opportunity for you to get groceries, buy supplies for your apartment. So we were thinking a large-scale grocery store here would be a nice development to bring people to the site, to bring people up and give them amenities that will help them in their daily livelihoods in downtown. And also providing greenways for them and opportunities for gardens and public gardens for them to develop and grow their own food there that can then be partnered with the grocery shop. Another development we thought was important was there's a rather large slope going up the hill, and it's pretty hard to walk up the hill here, which is why a lot of people end up taking this route to get to downtown. So we thought of opportunities like maybe a trolley car or a streetcar to help people get up the road so they can get to places like this park here. Another concern we've had is this intersection here is pretty rough. And it's pretty dangerous if you're trying to walk up the street to get to this park here. So we were thinking maybe a roundabout. That way it'll allow for traffic to flow smoother through this area. It'll allow for a connection through the James Robertson Parkway Bridge here. And just all around make it a safer place for people around there. Also, two gateways that we've pointed out here that are pretty important that connect Charlotte Pike to other streets. And we've identified these as gateways for the entry towards the end of Charlotte Pike, and opening those up and providing opportunities for retail at the ground level for public spaces with housing on top, and some greenways that'll make it more of a public park. And then the connection to East Nashville. And then connection to East Nashville, making the bridge walkable, so adding sidewalks and bike lanes for those people who are taking the bridge across to East Nashville. I think I covered all points. So, okay. Oh, yeah.
I guess that would mainly
the.
We talked about having this grocery store basically be in partnership. Hi, I'm Johnson, by the way. Be in partnership with the farmers market, so that could be kind of another face of the farmers market along the Charlotte corridor.
Okay, so then we pick it up from there. We're in what was section 2, but essentially from downtown at the interstate loop all the way out to where one city is being developed and kind of the medical district overlaps with Charlotte. So when we were trying to select the one big priority that we were going to focus on, it was Charlotte itself and how abysmal it is through this section. Very wide, really only oriented to autos. It's very difficult to certainly bike or walk this area. So the green line represents our intervention along Charlotte, which was making it green, planting trees, widening the sidewalks, doing all of those expected things along Charlotte, but green being the priority there. The median down the middle, which also would be planted, as well as trees on the sides. There are blue lines sort of at the bottom of the map, which represents the AMP, the major transit route, presumably along West End. And then we also, through our area, have a couple of abandoned or semi-used rail lines. So we wanted to take advantage of that and proposing potentially some transit node in here that leads to downtown. Crossing the interstate and actually making this connection to downtown was really important. At Charlotte, And then we also imagine an intervention up here close to Marathon Village. There's actually that block across from Marathon that's kind of interstitial space at this point, but really wanted to fill that in, make an obvious connection there, which goes all the way through to Watkins Park, an existing park. And since we were making axial relationships, we drew then a line from there down across Charlotte, an important crossing point at 17th, down to where Broadway and West End split, that potential Times Square location there, but connecting those dots. And then the other real intervention that we did was when we got back here to this medical district area where that's starting to bleed over, we said, yeah, let's go ahead and let that intensity bleed across Charlotte into this no man's zone where there's really a lot of empty space along those rail lines. So that, those large block black buildings shown there, we kind of bled over into here. In the spaces that were kind of left over, we actually took a sort of laissez-faire attitude about that, except to say we really need to focus on an affordable housing component, workforce housing, presumably in this area close to downtown where MDHA has its housing, and then maybe introducing a smallish pocket park here and there to begin to catalyze some of that in a more organized way. Yeah, and specifically that workforce housing would be driven by the medical development a little further down the street, but there's a great synergy between those things. I think that was it.
All right, so we have the next section here. A few problems we identified were people go pretty fast on Charlotte, and we decided that a road diet was in order, maybe wider bike lanes. And another thing we talked about was there's the spurs from the train tracks, which is the green here, that we thought would be an ideal spot for a Rails to Trails program, maybe. Maybe more areas for diverse employment. There's a lot of the hospitals in this area, but there's not sort of different areas for employment there. Let's see. We talked about maybe ideas to slow traffic, maybe reducing the lanes a little bit and timing the lights so that speeding on Charlotte wasn't so much. We talked about protected bike lane. Just making it more safe for sort of working class. Access to food, it's pretty limited in terms of on actual Charlotte. There's not many grocery stores or there's no grocery stores in this district or many restaurants. Let's see, or public gardens or things like that. We thought it would be nice to integrate sort of TSU, since there is sort of an agricultural program there, maybe have gardens that would sort of connect these areas of TSU and Charlotte there. Major barriers was sort of the CSX tracks and I-40, and those, we thought between there is probably the biggest spot for growth. Let's see. And so just eliminating like the spurs, the CSX spurs would help encourage growth and walking in this area specifically. Let's see. Major projects, probably the Greenway here was probably what we talked about most in this area, would encourage walking in that area. One City would definitely help jobs, and which is right here in the corner here. And this would sort of become a focal point for this area, that center intersection. Again, like privately, a grocery store, HCA or One City would be sort of giant private development for that area. And then the Greenway and Road Diet would be sort of the public projects that would help that area And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And if you all want to be on deck to go next.
All right, we picked up the next section. Let's see here. So we had sections from basically 37th Avenue to about 51st down this end. And really, we talked about a lot of concepts and a lot of different ideas about how to generate additional activity on Charlotte. This particular stretch of Charlotte has a decent amount of redevelopment currently underway. It has some restaurant draws, some other big draws for the neighborhood. But one of the things we really focused on was kind of the northern side of Charlotte Avenue, the two neighborhoods, one more of a historical neighborhood south of Tennessee State, and then also the area to the north of Charlotte and above Richland Park, really. There's some major barriers in between these two neighborhoods, mainly a rail track that runs basically right through the heart of it that really separates these two neighborhoods. These have been challenged in the past, and one of the ways we looked at potentially opening up this that would eventually help commercialize the other parts of Charlotte here would be to provide better connectivity through a bridging system to connect the street grids to allow for better flow of traffic through those areas. Let's see, so that would be kind of like a major catalyst project there. We also talked about a catalyst project here a little bit further up north, connecting Tennessee Avenue across to Albion Street, and potentially redevelopment of MDHA public housing in the next 10, 20 years and redoing park systems in that area. What else am I missing?
Yeah, sure. Well, part of the line around here, we talked about doing a rails with trails possibility, and then one of the big ideas I think for the group, and it's hard to see, but kind of a loop trail. There's already an existing greenway and it goes down to the park here, and so this would actually tie into Charlotte and then loop around and connect to parks here and then come back along. And we were sort of mixed about whether that goes on Tennessee and it's a straight connection or if that happens on another street. But we did find out a lot of exciting things are happening. There's a new project here. But yeah, this was essentially the core.
And a couple other things. I mean, on 51st, there's some new development happening kind of on the northern side of this area. So we talked about stretching the commercial district from Charlotte and 51st up north, and potentially looking at doing the same on 40th. That seems to be the kind of main thoroughfare for this neighborhood, is getting on 40th here and connecting to these neighborhoods. So that's it. Thanks.
Did your, yeah. Yeah, there's a 3.5 because we added an area after we'd already kind of staked this out, so it'd be a little confusing.
All right, so we have the Charlotte Avenue where it meets White Ridge. Yeah. And so with this neighborhood, I guess the first thing we sort of identified the pros and the cons, and the pros we've come up with was that it actually touches Richland Creek and the Cumberland. And the downsides we found with regard to Charlotte Pike was the disconnect due to the interstate and then trying to utilize connections to the water. There's obviously a big disconnect with the industrial here to the Cumberland. So we thought the best thing that could happen is some projects that would kickstart those, changing those disconnects, whether private, public together, and there would be the gateways to improve the connections to Charlotte. And what's kind of great about this area is there's 3 possibilities. We have the Morrow Road connection with the Greenway, so there's sort of a green element. There's 51st, which could become more of a commercial Main Street element, and then you have 46th, which is more of the on-off to the interstate, and then a connection into Sylvan Park. So that was a major one, and touched on there. Number 2, having to do with 51st, encouraging some mixed use, trying to find a way to slow down some of the traffic. There's a lot of talk about changing that 4-lane road into something of 2 with more pedestrian, bike, oh yeah, we talked about improving some of the transit there. There's one of the things is there's not a great deal of public transit up here from what we talked about. So that was those. And then what else did we touch on? What's that? Cheated. I went into some of that already. Oh yeah. Okay. So then the connection to the Cumberland. I guess we can just expand on what we talked about with those potential projects that would kickstart that, and would be some sort of pedestrian bridge that could get that would connect this area to Park that is north of the Cumberland. And what do we have last? Yeah, that had more to do with the boundaries of the neighborhood. As we got into talking about these entranceways, we realized there's some edges that could really be defined, and Morrow Road was took up a large portion of the conversation, and as it says here, re-envisioning some development along Morrow, addressing the floodplain and what opportunities could lie there. Does that sound good? Yeah.
I may know an organization that can help you with some of those before and afters of 51st Avenue.
Table 5. My name is Brian Hubbard.
I'm Greg Tidwell. We drew on the aerial.
Yeah, sorry for the visualization you might have here. Connectivity was a really large problem at this section of Charlotte. We have kind of a major divider of I-40, really kind of separating 2 zones, and then Charlotte also divides more of a retail and kind of business zone with a large, really sprawled out, another residential zone. So we decided that infill development and regional shopping center areas to connect the neighborhoods to Charlotte, Pike, and corridor, and then fill the gaps. So within this whole region, we decided that there were a lot of development opportunities of the large parking swaths, so that we could then infill with residential, kind of business oriented, and then also help spur some more growth within this area to then bring more residents, more businesses. Then creating pedestrian infrastructure and parks and greenways to connect Charlotte Pike to the Cumberland River and access to Bell Bend, access and the river. So the river, this is kind of one of the main few areas that Charlotte really accesses the Cumberland River right here. So we decided that was going to be our big draw. So instead of turning our back on the river, that was going to be kind of the catalyst for growth, and also for some more growth in terms of economic value of the land. So creating more of a higher density of residential, creating swaths of parks that then create connections to the retail development or the business development that then also connect back to the residential. We thought about bringing back the old ferry connection that would then give us this access to this really nice farmland that could then give us more of the farm to table type concept that's really heavy here in Nashville, but obviously utilizing infrastructure that's already there, maybe just buying it back from the farmer that's already there, but also kind of create that kind of niche moment that we really don't get here, and enjoying the ferry right across the river. And then the third one was really creating epicenters, that sense of place along Charlotte corridor. Kind of these two that we identified, one down by a school right off the interstate, and then one more inland, right kind of at the node of Hillsborough and Charlotte Pike. It may not be a roundabout, but it's actually just another kind of higher density that happens at that point, so that you know that as you come off the interstate, you're really reaching the destination, and it's not just another park along Charlotte. So this is our development.
Hi, I'm Dwight, and this is Clint. So our area is Charlotte Avenue at Old Hickory Boulevard. The area is kind of developed as a suburban sprawl hell, the best we could tell. This is Charlotte Avenue coming out, Old Hickory, residential, there's a Sam's, there's a quarry, there's an unnamed creek right here. And our thought is that we need to stop the suburbanization of Nashville growing west at this point. Our idea is to rezone some tracts that have crossed the creek to back to rural from suburban, and use this edge along with a created greenway and these ridges as kind of the stop, an edge to development, to incentivize the redevelopment of this suburban stuff. We're proposing the creation of a center, kind of a transportation hub that would be at the end of Charlotte here in the crossroads with Old Hickory Boulevard. And our idea is to incentivize it by creating a very dense, providing density for the redevelopment of everything within kind of this edge that you see here, so that we would have mixed-use centers and transportation hubs both directions. We'd have the quarry here that eventually would be transitioned over to open space, and we would actually have greenways that go to Bell's Bend and back towards Bellevue. Preserving the ridge tops, we're noticing that a lot of multifamily is starting to come in and encroach, and they're starting to cut that. We'd really like to maintain those natural edges wherever possible to kind of create a framework for the development. And again, add density so that we see the eventual redevelopment of some of the suburban sprawl into a much more organized center, and then residential working out. Did it?
Next table. What did you get to? John? Thank you. By the way, if you haven't been on these tables that are further out, you'll notice a lot of red, and that's the steep slope of the hills of the area. So these will really pop. See? This table got two areas to work on because it's the most rural part of the county, so we gave them two assignments. Right, John?
Hello, my name is Jonathan Hopkins, and we are the furthest west district in the county. Very rural area, kind of going towards Pegram. It is straight here. Okay.
One more time.
Okay. So, as I said, we're further west, coming out from that Old Hickory intersection. And let me see here. So here we are. Basically, we're pretty limited as far as topography, as previously mentioned. And we have the Harpeth River that flows through most of our area here. And I'm trying not to get in the way too much. And we also have a train track that kind of cuts through our area as well. So I think one of the big themes with us, with this section of Charlotte that extends out westward, many of you know who've traveled this area, it's a very narrow 2-lane road. And so it's inconducive of really any kind of biking or walking. We're all talking about healthy communities here today. So I think one of the main points we were looking at doing is creating a multi-use bike walking path that extends mostly along the Charlotte corridor, but would also follow in line with some of the floodplain areas, so that, maybe instead of walking right along a busy 2-lane road, you can maybe walk down by the river and, kind of come up just intermittently. We talked about, in addition, there's a section here where Old Charlotte runs into Charlotte or Highway 70 at this point. There's a little commercial, there's a little BP station, and I remember it from a kid's where you get your fish bait and fishing supplies and stuff like that. But the railroad track parallels this area. We were talking about redoing this intersection to make it a little bit more safe. And then at this intersection, we talked about a mixed use residential development, which would have mixed housing. And we actually came up with the name for it, the Village. So you'd have the Village people here.
Bellevue as YMCA, we've got the Village people.
That's right. We got to have our own mascot here. But within this mixed housing, we would have shops, some amenities, maybe some restaurants where people won't have to drive all the way into Bellevue just to get some food or some groceries. We also, and actually I'm a native here and I didn't know this, but there's a park, a state park, Hidden Lake, i.e. Hidden, that's right here. We talked about connecting that with other sectors around where we're talking about our mixed use housing. We talked about adding some pedestrian crossings that cross the Harpeth River to connect this existing neighborhood down here to the areas along Charlotte here. And then we also talked about extending the mixed, or I guess the multi-use walking path down Old Charlotte here and going towards the Biltmore, which I guess is a planned future development. And Interstate 40 is further down this way. So, so that's kind of the main ideas we had. There's this section here where Highway 70 and Charlotte meet. The Bellevue Mall's further down this way. We talked about maybe making this intersection where these two highways come together some type of park or some type of entrance way into this section of Charlotte. Maybe a sign, "Welcome to the Village," or something along to that effect. But we just talked about connectivity and making it more walk-friendly, bike-friendly, that sort of thing. So I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, back to number 1. Father-daughter combo here. I won't let them talk. We never get that. So we are returning to Area 1, which was done by the first group. Hold up. Rick Bernhardt happened by while we were talking about the Capitol. He seems concerned. No, we are not proposing removing the state Capitol building.
It can stay.
He kept saying we were
it can
proposing
stay.
to remove the state Capitol. He clearly misunderstood something.
Maybe the people within said state capital, but not the capital itself. So we primarily, we're just going to identify the three catalysts that we talked about. And well, first of all, though, this is the state campus, the state core. I mean, where all the state office buildings are all there together. It was an interesting point that we frankly didn't discuss ourselves much about the fact that it goes dead at 4:30, and I'm glad someone addressed that because we frankly didn't. But one thing we talked about is it's a pedestrian generator. And what you have is, so our first item is this intersection here. Both of these were most likely done when James Robertson was put in as a wonderful 4-lane vehicular, worshiping the vehicle type of roadway with the flyovers in a very urban setting. And so you don't need flyovers in a very urban setting. So returning this intersection and then the one where James Robertson merges back into Charlotte, which is not flyovers, but as anyone that's been there knows, it's extraordinarily confusing both for people on bicycle, foot, or in a car. So reconfiguring both of those, and somebody was saying, well, how? We said, well, pull up an aerial from right before we did this, and it probably looks fine. So you probably go back to what it was, the urban condition that you had before. And then in the midst of that, you do have the streetscape needed along Charlotte proper, because a lot of people walk up and down that now, but it's pretty much because you need to as opposed to because you want to. Second is, of course, this area up here is where Boyle is doing their development, so we really didn't talk about it too much. Good things are about to happen. Adam's part of that design team, so you're making sure it's good things, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
But across the street, you have what is essentially an industrial storage facility in the NES backlots. And so all of those three pieces are massively underutilized, inappropriate for the rest of the urbanization you have going on. So that was our second catalyst, sort of the urbanization of that piece of land with things that either draws people or has people in it. We really didn't get too much into details, just something other than transformers and trucks being stored there. And the third is, I was just joking earlier that it's not really healthy active transportation because it's going to include a vehicle, but as we all know, of course, that's not true. So we're talking about a circulator. Having a circulator that goes through the newly developed area. Emily, I think, properly pointed out should go up near Meg's because you've got kids there that are, MLK, sorry, up to MLK because you've got kids that are just about old enough, the parents will say, sure, you can go downtown, but they're not in vehicles or anything like that yet, and it's a bit far to walk. So you can bring those people in, up in the Marathon area, just a circulator that allows you to get in this area, and that also addresses, I think, the same problem about the hill. Yes, you can walk up it, and people should, but that way you can get people into this whole area circulating better, getting off and on the same wonderful MTA circulator system that we already have.
Boom.
Another aerial photograph, John. Breaking the rules.
Hi, I'm Tyler Jones, here to talk about Section 2 again, which runs from 26th to I-40. Let's reorient this so I can, yeah, there we go. From 26th to I-40 here. It's similar to the first group that spoke about this section of the road. We really thought the most important thing to do here is to activate Charlotte, to make it more pedestrian friendly, more bike friendly, to kind of engage both the north and the south sides with one another. Right now, we kind of see the street as a division between both sides of the community. So, setting up street trees, buffered bike lanes, both on Charlotte and then on some of the more active transportation arteries such as D.D. Todd, 18th Avenue, etc. And then where those arteries come together, we talked about setting up transportation and community hubs, whereby bus, bike, car share all came together. Opportunity for pop-up retail, potential for pop-up farmers markets, to really serve this area, which right now is basically a food desert. So in addition to those pop-up farmers markets, we also targeted a space basically directly across from MLK School for a grocery. In addition to that, we looked at sort of the south side here where the medical community has a stronghold, and looked at the large amount of surface level parking that exists right now. So we talked about densifying that area with mixed use development, potentially adding some pocket parks to bring some green space into the community to make it more pedestrian friendly, and improve that portion of South Charlotte. In regard to sort of more blue sky stuff, we noticed this band here of sort of industrial and green space. I'm not sure how well you can see it on this aerial, but essentially what you've got is potential to connect Centennial Park here at kind of the edge of the map, all the way over with sort of the Sulphur Dell, and then terminating at Bicentennial Mall. There's a railway here that we talked about, reappropriation via rails to trails scenario that could be used sort of as a catalyst to create this tricentennial greenway, as we call it, because we figured it would take forever to get done. The other thing that we talked about that is maybe not so blue sky, but probably further out, is the redevelopment of the Andrew Jackson community, MDHA's property. We thought that could be a great opportunity to create a mixed-use, mixed affordability community that could kind of serve as a catalyst to connect sort of the residential area with both Fisk and Meharry, which are in this portion of town as well. So those were ideas for Section 2.
Second stab group, the third portion, which is, as Jill will show, the portion that has the I-40 and 440 interchange there. The existing conditions here, that what we kind of noticed was in this area there are a lot of barriers. There are a lot of things that are prohibiting people from getting to where they might want to go. There's the interstate, there's the railroad that's coming through. The linear aspect of HCA's campus is a barrier. And there's also some topographical and even socioeconomic barriers. And that really drove us to take a look at what was impeding the progress here. And we thought as a group that it might be an idea to attack these areas. So it's some of these problem spots could become maybe areas that we want to inhabit and want to go to. The first ones we kind of poked at were the overpasses from the interstate. If we can create a manner of a street that we want to be there, we can start to heal the grid in certain areas and maybe start connecting some of these pocket parks. We have Hadley Park up towards the north end of our square, and there's one right off 28th Avenue, and we can start to say, well, maybe we need to connect Pearl Cone High School and TSU. If we start to do that, the way we see this is that it would be more of a bike or pedestrian-friendly avenue for people to get to where they're going. There's also a dearth of development in this area, and we don't see that is really all that necessary. There is housing, and we wanted to be sensitive and mindful to that, but there needs to be, as other people have mentioned, there needs to be some grocery stores, and there needs to be some things that people get to. So in terms of catalytic projects, the first thing, it's not listed first, but the first thing that we wanted to talk about was actually looking at the Clifton Avenue, which kind of runs parallel to Charlotte, and how we can make that a destination where you're not right on the busy Charlotte, the fast speeding cars on Charlotte, take a look at Clifton, and maybe that is more of the slow-paced, brick sidewalk, bike lane scenario, and that's where the development started to happen. And we picked that corner just due to its proximity and to the infrastructure that's already there. The next thing would be to really look at the Clifton Avenue itself. What do we want for that entire street? And we thought there could be a lot of improvements there. The Music City Bikeway goes through here, so if we really took that to heart and made that a place that people would want to get on their bicycle and get down to the developments that we have looking out, that would be good. The other thing is really just repairing and redeveloping what's there. We think that the groundwork is there. There just need to be made a few improvements. So we've identified, as I said earlier, certain areas that connect these, that connect all these different parks and schools and everything like that. Lastly, I didn't want to think that we were just ignoring Charlotte, because that's not the case. But we also figured you guys would all figure that out for us. So we wanted to take a look at one portion of Charlotte that again was a barrier, and maybe we look at slowing down traffic there and creating a much more friendly pedestrian traffic north-south, so people that live in this area will want to travel south, take the new connector, or another portion closer to the east end of the HCA campus to get to Centennial Park, which would encourage healthy walking habits and everything like that. So that's it.
Next. 3.5.
We're section 3.5, the one in between section 3 and 4. But kind of on 42nd Avenue here. And we've kind of identified some of those similar themes that you guys have, trying to make Charlotte less dangerous with car speed and thinning it up, maybe bike lanes, greenery. But a couple of the things we really picked up on was that there is a obvious huge divide that divides north and south with Charlotte Avenue, and then 40 cutting right through all that. And then also there's a pretty massive industrial connection with the old rail line. This used to be a former bomb factory, World War II, and it goes all the way up to the river, and all of that seems to be pretty industrial. So that kind of created 4 little quadrants we discovered. And a couple other things we picked up was that there's different types of education schools that are happening, not your typical elementary school, middle school, high school, etc. But actually, with Cone Adult Learning Center. And these are all kind of scattered throughout the area. And so that got us thinking of how we can maybe tie those all together, especially after what we listened to this morning. So a couple of our catalysts. One was kind of the rails to trails idea on that industrial, where that could be the linear park that is now a connection instead of a division. And then one of the bigger things that we started looking at was actually creating, instead of like a high line of New York City, but maybe a low line idea where we get to go under 40 and connect the nation's kind of residential housing here. And then being able to create some sort of community center that with an amphitheater and more of outdoor space, and creating a tunnel that connects back to Richland Park, and maybe that becomes a nice cross axis that connects back north and south, and to where 40 isn't necessarily a scar, but you get to go under and to create kind of one moment. Think of maybe a special architectural element that's in that tunnel that's lighted, outdoor space, but that's about it. Table 4.
All right, so we're number 4. I'm Andrew, and this is Zach. And this is kind of a good lead off from the last group that just spoke. We're kind of on down the road a little bit. We're now at 51st Avenue, and you've got Charlotte running down here with the park here, and they have the farmers market that goes on the weekends. And Charlotte has become pretty active around this area, and then once it gets down to here, it kind of stops. So we looked at 51st as sort of a turning point for that to start to connect back up, very similarly to the previous group. And up here we've got a heavy industrial area. Over here we've got a greenway, actually currently under construction. And the housing market has really started to take off moving this way, but it kind of dies right here. And so you've got some price drops. You go from something like $200,000 to maybe $70,000 just over here. And so what we wanted to do is make that turn and continue that growth and make this sort of a sweet spot for a residential place to live. And so the catalysts we thought of to do that were looking at 51st as sort of a green spine and making it a pedestrian-owned road. There would still be vehicular traffic, but it would be one of those places where you don't feel unsafe or uncomfortable or too lazy to even walk under the interstate here to get to this happening spot. I would fall into the lazy category, so if I got a house here, I might think about it, but so it would need to be aesthetically pleasing as well as accessible, and then we would continue that accessibility over into here and connect to the greenway. And I think that's about all we have. Good, thanks.
We're section 5, and I think you may have seen this section before in an aerial view. There's a rock quarry over here. There's a, this is Bell's Bend, and this is the area that was in the news quite a bit. And we talked about the same thing. We talked about walkability and connectability. There's a bottleneck on Charlotte where it goes from 2 lanes down to 1 lane. We'd like to widen that. We want to improve the walkability of Charlotte. Many places along where Nashville West is, there's a sidewalk that goes from here to here. Maybe we need to extend the sidewalk a little more. We talked about a pedestrian bridge across the river here, not to encourage development, but to make it easier for farmers to get over here with fresh food, or to have farm stands over here and these people could come over. We're talking about greenway, walking down this drainage area here. But then we talked about connecting. So we're talking about sidewalks, so these people can walk under the interstate over here and bike there. There are many big trucks, rock trucks, that use this often, and we want some sidewalks along there. We had a couple of people in our group that were, I think, actually natives and knew a lot, gave us some history. Full disclosure, I'm not a native. I've only been here 43 years. This area is smaller homes, younger people with families, with children, so we wanted them to be safe, we wanted them to be able to walk places. What else? We'd like to have some greenway along the river, and possibly on this side, walk over here and have some nice green places to walk. We talked about let's see, where did we talk about? We talked about, these are properties, but these are less expensive properties than down here in Westmead Hills. We talked about encouraging some development along there, also making it walkable and sidewalks. We kind of left Westmead Hills alone. Is anybody here from Westmead Hills? I pretty much want to leave that alone. Everybody there seems very happy with what they've got. That's about it. Can you think of anything else? Okay, that's it.
I believe this is our last group.
Thanks for sticking around. Our area was the Old Hickory Boulevard, Charlotte Pike intersection. It's just north of I-40. A couple of the key points was that it is rural and suburban. There isn't really any kind of urban core. There's nothing else really special going on. But at the north, there's a district. It's the existing rock quarry. So one of our things was to preserve the natural vistas and the views that they have going to the south. You can see by the red, there's a lot of steep slopes, and there's a lot of just natural preserve already there. So maintaining that and being on Old Hickory Boulevard or being on Charlotte Pike and be able to look south and still see the greenery, we'd like to keep that. Keep that rural feel and not go into the suburban feel, F-E-E-L. The other thing that we had was repurposing the existing district, which is the rock quarry, when it dies, to an institutional district. So maybe bringing in, with the population boom that Nashville's supposed to have in the future, a school system there, maybe a high school and a middle school. There's an elementary school currently right off the interstate, and there's a Nashville Christian Academy in the particular zone as well. So to be able to repurpose that district as another district would start to maybe invigorate a little more development in that area. So that's where we were thinking that we could have mixed transportation. Really start to come in along Charlotte Pike. Sidewalks would be fine. A lot of people are not going to be walking in that area, but it'd be nice to encourage it if they live close to school, safe places for kids to walk, trails to connect to nature parks and things. The other thing that's a little atypical about ours is the distance away from downtown, and that a lot of people would be going to downtown from this site. So we looked at maybe as a big idea, high-speed transportation along the interstate. So instead of really repurposing Charlotte Pike as a corridor as for anything more than buses, using the interstate as a way to encourage a faster way to get downtown. And the healthy aspect would be getting to that station and living near it, and then being able to get downtown quicker, coming back out, stopping at the grocery on the way home, and that was kind of all we had.
Well, so that completes the presentations by the groups, and we're kind of nearing the end of the program. I just wanted to maybe give an opportunity to anyone before we kind of close out, if you just had a comment about this process today. Andre.
That was fabulous. I wanted to ask, what do we get to do with all of this?
Yeah. That's a part of my closing remarks. Okay. Any other sort of general comments? I mean, I hope you kind of saw probably a lot of meetings that you've attended. It's usually focused on the same area, so I thought this was really fascinating, getting glimpses of all these different areas along the corridor and kind of envisioning it holistically. So let me just go up to the stage. So the question was, what do we get to do with this? And
our goal is to take this information that was produced today and incorporate that into a publication which will sort of encapsulate a lot of the information on healthy communities, the takeaways from both from the sort of national level with the ULI publication, which please make sure you take this home with you, as well as the small pamphlet that was produced based on our work. And this will be a publication that will come out later this year. And so the work that you've done today will go into that, but I think it will serve as a case study for how we can look at other areas of the county and sort of treat it the same way. And from that perspective, kind of moving forward, I think a major initiative that's happening in the city right now is the update to the general plan, the Nashville Next process. So I've asked Rick, instead of coming from me, I think it should come from the source. So I'd like Rick just to say a few words about how you can be sure to be involved in that and what's going on in the next upcoming few months.
Thanks, Gary, and I won't keep you too long. I just wanted to point out that a lot of the work that's being done here, as Gary said, is going to be published in a publication they're doing, but it also likely to find its way into Nashville Next. The booklet, is Shaping Healthy Communities book, will also be portions that'll be a major portion of the Nashville Next process. Many of y'all have been involved in Nashville Next. We're kind of entering the last part. We've had the fun part of doing the research, doing the big sky visioning, looking out in the future. And just this week, we have begun the process of making some choices. The last major effort of the Nashville Next process include a growth mapping. And as a result of that growth mapping, we've been utilizing the resource teams and all to come up with 3 development futures or scenarios, if you will. And those scenarios are going to have a lot of discussion this summer in a whole series of ways. We're having a number of events this summer to involve the community. One thing I will note, there's a survey that's out on the table right outside that you're welcome to take, fill out, and return to us. You also can go to the NashvilleNext.net page, and there's an online survey that has the same information. It's kind of fun to walk your way through. But this summer, we're going to be engaging the community in a whole number of ways. We've got 25 lounges or open houses. The first one was this past Tuesday night, I think, wasn't it? It was at Edmondson Library. The next one will be Monday night at the Green Hills Library, and through the summer we've got about 25 of these planned. The 30th, which is a week from Monday, we have a community conversation on the issue of housing and gentrification, much like what you've had here, where we'll have an opportunity to discuss some of the key issues with housing affordability and gentrification. That's going to be at the Martin Professional Development Center there at Aiken School in Hillsborough Village. But if you go to our website, you can access the survey, you can access any of the lounges. The lounges are really a 2-hour, they're all from 5 to 7 in the evening. They're all kind of drop in. It's not a presentation. You can drop in anytime through that. We can walk you through the various options and futures. You'll have an opportunity to make some comments on which of those options. And basically there are 3. There's the business as usual. There's one with downtown and Pikes, and then there's one with centers and adjacent infill. And they have different implications, and we've analyzed them in terms of what are the implications on housing affordability, walkability, a whole series of criteria, and you can vote on what criteria are important to you, which of the futures are important to you. That will lead to, where I'm really going is leading to the fall process with coming up with a preferred future, which will lead the direction of the community, and updates to the community plans. And we're going to be utilizing a lot of the work that you're doing here, also work that was done in the spring. We were able to take advantage of the University of Tennessee. TK was here, he's still here, and his design studio, as well as Ellen Dunham Jones' design studio from Georgia Tech. And they looked at they looked at, I think there was a total of 12 different suburban situations, and they came up with some designs. So we're going to be looking at those designs. We're going to be looking at the designs that the Civic Design Center has done through their process. We're going to be looking at this. We're going to be engaging the community, and actually we'll be incorporating a lot of those, I believe, into the community plan updates. So we need you to be involved. We need you to have your input. NashvilleNext.net is the easiest thing, but come out for the fun at one of the lounges. Sorry, we don't have beer and wine, which we should have at a lounge, but these are all public facilities, so maybe in the trunk of the car. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Rick. Rick Bernhardt, Director of Planning Department. Okay. It's always one of my proudest accomplishments to get people out early, which I think we'll do today. I just want to give a few final comments and thank yous. At the last minute, I mean, this group was so, this program was so well attended that we had to add on some facilitators at the last minute. So in your program, there's a list of all the facilitators. I just want to say thank you so much. And then if you could all stand up, please, facilitators today. This was really a superstar team. And in addition to everyone that's listed here, I want to thank David Code, Tara Myers, Laura Bean, Johnson Bullard, and David Kaline for stepping in at the last minute. We had 170 people signed up for this program, and 120 stayed for the whole day. So that's an incredible thing. And I want to thank Rose. Thank you so much for the partnership with ULI. It's been a wonderful process. It's gone by so quickly, and it's just come off great today, and I'm really happy with it. From our staff, I want to thank Ron Yearwood, who's my partner in crime, running the design studio, and Julia Landstreet. And I have to also thank our wonderful volunteers, interns, design fellows, Eric Hoke, Emily Kleinfelter, Susan Steffenhagen, Joe Mays, and Chelsea Valega. Please stand up. I want you to, we couldn't have done anything without them. Thank you. And a very special thank you to ESA for helping us out with our graphics and helping with the publication of this booklet. Ron Lustig, Lee Davis, and Philip Powers. Thank you very much. It's great. One final mention for Hampton Inn Suites. They provided a very wonderful rate for our speaker. And of course, the sponsors for this event, the ULI Foundation, One City, Baptist Healing Trust, ESA, and the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Anything else, Rose? I don't want to miss it. And of course, Ryan Doyle, our president. Did Ryan? He left. He had to leave. So that's why he's not up here. He would have poked me in the stomach for forgetting to say that. So again, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and look forward to seeing what the outcome of these studies are. Thank you.